I turned a 3-hour supply chain reconciliation task into a 3-second process. On average, a medium-sized warehouse is spending anywhere between 4 to 6 hours a week manually reconciling inbound shipments. That's roughly between 200 to 300 hours per year. At the average Australian wage for a warehouse admin at $39 per hour, this adds up to between 8 and 12 grand a year on a repetitive task that could have been automated. I built a system that automates this process. It cuts down on these excessive hours and it boils it down to just one click, so a matter of seconds. It's been saving hours a week ever since. In this video, I want to show you how I built it, how it works, how I got to develop it, and how I was able to ensure that it actually meets the specifications of which the people who are going to use it are demanding and what they're hoping to see. And whether or not you're in supply chain, if you're doing any sort of data comparison, any sort of reconciliation tasks in any industry, you can then apply this framework to solve for the problems in your industry, in your job, in your business, to bring value, and hopefully you can learn through the mistakes that I made and follow the path that worked for me and that I'm sure would work for you as well. So essentially, reconciliation is just comparing two different data sources to find mismatches in information. So essentially what reconciliation is looking like is, if you have a data set, for example, data set 1, you would have A, B, C for data. And data set 2 would only have A, no B, and just C. That miscongruence between the two data sets, you not having the B on data set 2, is what would be flagged in a reconciliation task. When it comes to inbound logistics, maybe you were supposed to receive 100 boxes in a container, and inside the 100 boxes, maybe there were supposed to be 10 parts a box. Now, if on the system, that's what was supposed to be sent to you, but then you look at third-party logistics data and you cross-compare it, then maybe you can find out, okay, certain boxes or certain parts in certain boxes never arrived. And so it's that reconciliation process, it's that comparative analysis that you conduct between what's on the ERP system and what's coming from third-party logistics data. This allows you to respond accurately. This allows you to react to the issue before it even reaches the client. You can imagine the sort of problems that would arise if your client is supposed to receive 10 boxes and inside the 10 boxes they're missing 2 parts. In the supply chain that I work with a lot of mining firms, it's a big problem because maybe it's going to lead to downtime for the clients. For these sort of mining clients, downtime of just 1 hour of a delay of not receiving a part, a critical part, could lead to losses of up to $100,000 an hour. Many times you'll find lead time for these parts is not just 1 hour, you're gonna have 2 weeks. And so you can imagine the sort of losses that can be saved from a tool like this, the time savings that you can create through responding quickly, having a supply chain that responds to issues that are inevitable. And so being able to track these and respond really makes your supply chain a lot stronger, a lot quicker. The result of this, you get great time savings. It's a lot less labor intensive on your squad. Your squad can focus on what's more important. You get cleaner data and you get more visibility, and you're able to respond to an issue of undershipping, overshipping, missed boxes, missed parts, missed containers. You get to respond in a timely manner. You get to respond live. Now, before writing even a single line of code, I spent a great deal of time actually understanding what the issue looks like. Now, how did this look like? It looked like me sitting down with the managers, with the people who would actually use this tool, who actually carry out these inbound reconciliation processes, the people that would actually benefit from me constructing this tool. And I asked them 3 questions, and I think these are the best 3 questions you can ask when you're building a solution for somebody else to add value to an operation. So the number one, the first one is where. The second one is how often. The last one, ideal outcome. So in a situation like this, where is referring to where do these issues happen? In what part of the operation? Because the operations have workflows. So during that workflow, where exactly is this happening? The whole context, how is it happening? The next one is how often. Now this is a very important one because it lets you gauge how valuable your solution can be. The higher the frequency of a problem, the more prevalent it is, the more present it is in the operations. Now, needless to say, maybe there's, many times you'll find issues that only happen once a decade that are massive. This is, we're trying to automate day-to-day operations. We're trying to be leaner. We're trying to have as an efficient of a supply chain as we can when we deal with day-to-day operations. The last one is ideal outcome. For me, this is the most important one. So these are the people that are dealing with the reconciliation tasks. They do it day to day. They know exactly the problems. They know exactly how it could be better. They just don't know how to do it. Maybe they don't have the time to do it. They don't have maybe the skill to do it. So your job as a person who's going to provide the solution for them is get their ideal outcome and provided for them. In school, you are graded by your teachers. In real life and in business, you are graded by your clients. You're graded by the people who will use your solutions. So ask them as if they were your teachers. Ask them as if they were grading your work, because at the end of the day, their satisfaction with your solution is the only satisfaction that matters. They are the ones that are going to benefit from this. And if it's not 10 times better, if it's not 10 times more efficient for them, they're not going to want to use your solution, because there's an element of resistance of change. The way they do it now, of course, it works to a certain degree. Maybe it's not the most efficient, but it works. And why change it if it's not for something much better? Learn their dream outcome, meet their expectations, exceed their expectations. If you just sit down and listen to them, they will tell you what they're looking for. They will tell you the solution they need. They will tell you what they want. And it's just based around tailoring your solution and your execution around what actually works for their operation, what is going to benefit them and their operations. Now, in my scenario, when I was looking at their workflow, what I learned is where it was during the inbound reconciliation process. When stuff is coming in, there was a lot of mismatches that were occurring. How often? They were dealing with this 1 to 3% of the time. Now you're looking at a very big volume of things coming through. So even a 1%, even a sub 1% mismatch can be a huge miscongruence to have between your systems. And this leads to real tangible inefficiencies. And once again, their ideal outcome, and I think this is the ideal outcome for a lot of people, is how can we make it faster? How can we make it easier for people to use? And how can we have it more accurate? Because at the end of the day, it's Pareto principle at play. It's that 20% of the small stuff that creates 80% of the problems. And so when you have a tool that lets you investigate it and lets you pinpoint exactly that small subset of problematic parts that are missing and problematic boxes that are missing, then you can potentially strongly work towards reducing that 80% that's negatively impacting your numbers and make your operations a lot more lean, a lot more accurate, and your clients a lot more satisfied. So now for building the solution. Once the problem was clear, once I understood the vision, the dream outcome, I worked closely with a few systems analysts, a few internal team members that know their internal systems. I pulled the right data regarding the invoices, regarding everything coming into the facility in the ERP system. And then I cross-compared it by pulling the 3PL data. And once you have these two, you're able to properly cross-compare and build a tool using a dashboarding system that is easily accessible to anybody within the warehouse. Excel was my choice. Now, this is a very important part to actually building the solution. The logic that you use whilst building these sort of solutions for a company has to follow the logic of the specific systems, the ERP systems that that firm is using, the 3PL logistics firm is using. A lot of these different companies use different systems and they have different logics, they have different languages. So once again, this is something that you have to sit down with the internal people at the company you're working for, the client you're working for, and with the logistics firm to really understand the logic between the systems that are being used, so you can map out a logic in your code that follows the logic and is congruent to actually find the mismatches accurately. So the logic must be tailored, and I'll write it down very clear so you guys can see it. Once again, the most important part, I think, for this process of building a solution. Having the logic be congruent with that of the systems you are using, with that of the 3PL logistics systems. Now, when you're building the solution, as I mentioned before, there is always going to be a strong element of resistance to change, no matter the organization you're in, no matter if you're talking to very highly skilled individuals or people that maybe didn't even graduate from high school. And so when you're implementing a solution, you must ensure that for the people that will be using your system, everything is 10 times more efficient, 10 times easier to use. This is why and I strongly emphasize this, the tool must be literally the click of a button, maybe 2 buttons, because any more than that, and you're persuading people to not use your tool. Do you want your tool to be used? It doesn't matter how good your tool is. If it's not going to be used, there's no point behind it. It can be a lot more efficient, yes, but if it's annoying to use, it will not be used. This is a highly critical thing to keep in mind, and it's to understand the human psyche behind resistance to change. And the way to circumvent that is by giving a solution that is so undeniably better than what they currently use that it makes no logical sense to not use the new implementation. So how this looked like on my tool was I boiled everything down to the press of 1 button, in which it generated a consolidated table with all the invoices and absolutely everything within that invoice that was due for reconciliation, due for checking. And if you go into the ERP systems and 3PL data, then you can absolutely validate all the results. So everything was on that same sheet, clear, transparent for everybody to look at, and consolidated for everybody to look at with the click of a button. Now to the next section, which is obstacles. Now, the toughest part of building a solution like this is not the technical ability. In big companies and small companies and medium-sized companies, what I've seen is there's a very big amount of data fragmentation. The reason a task like reconciliation can take so long is because the data is siloed between different systems and different people and different permissions that people have. And so this can make it, especially when you're dealing with a Fortune 500, these companies are of such a large magnitude that it makes it very, very difficult, very complicated to ensure that you can actually accurately cross-compare siloed data. And this takes a lot of creative skill. This takes a lot of talking to people. Now, the next thing I will mention is the technical ability. If it's the first time for you doing something like this, then of course there is a learning curve. It'll take you a little bit longer if it's your first time, second time doing it. But like anything, over time, you will get much faster and you will get a lot better at doing it. With the access to the internet, to tutorials, to AI, you can really build a strong foundation of technical ability in a very limited amount of time nowadays. The cold beauty and the cold truth of this is that that is the reality of the world. The data will be fragmented. It won't be all in a perfect dish, and that's why nobody's fixed it. Because if it was, it probably would have been fixed. And that is the art, is knowing how to access this siloed data, consolidate it, and then work with it. Now, the 4 most important lessons that I've learned throughout this process are the following. So number 1, success is dependent and equivalent to the success of the implementation. So what do I mean by this? The extent of which you can consider your tool effective and successful is dependent directly to the success of the implementation of your tool. So how well did you implement? How well did you train everybody to use your tool? You can build the most effective tool in the world if nobody in the team knows how to use the tool. The people who are supposed to use the tool don't know how to use it. And it's pointless because it will not be used. Number 2, understanding the pain points. So the way you build a tailored solution, the way you build a proper tool that will bring the value that you're looking for, that the team is looking for, that your client is looking for, is by understanding the pain points and directly tackling them. Number 3, the 10x rule. And now this is the rule that I've mentioned earlier on in this video. If your solution is not 10 times better, it's not 10 times easier to use, 10 times more accessible to use than the previous solution that is currently being used, there is no point in implementing your tool because it will not be used. There is always going to be an element of resistance of change, and the way to tackle this most effectively is by introducing a tool that is undeniably better than the current state of operations, making life easier for everybody, making it 10 times easier to use, 10 times better to use. The 10x rule. Number 4 is simplicity. Now this is more in the constructing of the tool. You must focus on simple answers, on simple solutions. The most simple solutions always win because overthinking, over-engineering ends up, what I've found, is wasting your time. Boiling it down to what is the problem, these are the pain points, what's the easiest way to circumvent all the hurdles, this and that, and just provide the solution that the people are looking for. That is simplicity, and actually I think being simple takes proactive steps. The simpler a solution is, the easier it is to use, the more effective it tackles what it's supposed to tackle, and the easier it is to implement. And then that goes back to lesson 1, which is success equals implementation. If it's simpler, and because it's simpler, it's easier to use, easier to implement, then the success of the tool can be expected to be higher. Now, the way I've been able to break down these lessons is because I've used this similar sort of framework in problem solving, in building solutions, not just for this reconciliation tool, but for building productivity dashboards, for building global dashboards, for building a bunch of solutions that are used in supply chain operations, that are used in Fortune 500 companies, that are used in smaller companies. I've seen this sort of framework be very effective at being able to find out the pain points of a solution, construct the solution that directly tackles those pain points, ensuring that your client or the person you're working for or working with is satisfied to the extent of which they deserve to be satisfied. Once again, I hope that with these frameworks, you're able to better construct solutions for yourself, for your business, for the job you're at, for your boss, for your manager, for anything that you're trying, any endeavor you're trying to do. I hope this helps you construct better solutions in a faster way, in a more effective way. When I was just starting out building supply chain solutions close to a year ago now, I would have loved to see somebody making videos like this. And so for me, I think this is just very special. If you found this interesting, please hit a like and subscribe and share with anybody who you think this video would benefit. And thank you for your time, and bye bye.